Welcome everybody to the September 14th, 2020 meeting for Van Wert City Council. We'll begin with an invocation by Pastor Keith Stoller, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody would please rise.
Heavenly Father, we are thankful to come before you again this evening. Thankful, Father, for the call to public service that you've called each one of the administration and our city council members to. Also this evening, I want to thank you, and I think everyone here will join me in thanks for your protective care over our police, our firemen, the sheriff's department, state patrol, dear God, because across the nation there seems to be a massive desire to hunt out and destroy our law officers. And so, Father, we thank you that you enabled us to be raised in this community where there is a great respect and admiration for law authority. Good God, that authority comes from you and is delegated to these folks who are charged with protecting the good and dealing with evil. So we thank you for the grace that you've administered to our community and their protection. We thank you, God, for the opportunity of public service, and we pray this evening during the meeting that every issue that comes before the council will be dealt with wisdom, with compassion and understanding. And we know, Father, that that wisdom which comes from above is that which really counts, not only for now, but for eternity. So we thank you for the opportunity to meet tonight. We pray your blessing upon this meeting in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Drew, please call the roll.
Mr. Marshall?
Here.
Mr. Callis?
Here.
Mr. Fenton?
Here.
Mr. Egler?
Here.
Mrs. Murgy?
Here.
Mr. Hellman?
Here.
Mr. Davis?
Here.
Everybody was presented the agenda for this evening's meeting, dated September 14th, 2020. Any additions or corrections to that agenda?
Move to accept as.
Move to accept by Mrs. Murgy, second by Mr. Egler. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Fenton?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Prior to this evening's meeting, you were also given the minutes from our last meeting dated August 24th, 2020. Any additions or corrections to those minutes? Hearing none.
Move to accept.
Move to accept, Mrs. Murgy, second by Mr. Egler. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Fenton?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Okay, comments, communications, petitions. I have nothing that won't be brought up in other business this evening. We do have Stacy Adam here. Are you going to take the lead on this, or do you want
Together.
all?
Into a project.
So the floor is yours.
All right,
I think we all know what we're talking about.
in December of 2019, the land bank acquired the Home Guard building. We have been working in partnership with the foundation, and they have been completing assessment on the ability to revitalize that property and look at that possibility. I'll let Seth talk about the estimates that they have already received, but I will tell you at 2 o'clock yesterday morning, the northwest section of the 4th floor, the bricks fell into Market Street, and we had those cleaned up this morning. Just to give you an idea of the actions that we have taken, we did have the city went through and closed the street, closed the alleys. They have pylons, they have part of the sidewalk and put tape up. The fire department joined us yesterday morning. We're up in the bucket truck so they could assess the damage from above. We have drone footage from the damage from up above. We met with Alexander and Bevelt this morning. They have given us recommendations. Part of the reason that we are here, actually before I do that, I will pass it over to you to just talk about the plans for the building.
Yeah, so we, for the past several months, have been coming through pretty extensive reconnaissance work on the building. And Drew, Seth Baker here, he got 3 minutes.
He's Executive Director of County Foundation.
We, first of all, to try to evaluate whether the building was even safe to do abatement work on, had to get some engineers in checking it out. And so for the past couple months, we've been doing that, diving into some cost estimates. Obviously, it wasn't safe to enter to do measurements, to submit for historic tax credit work. We were under the understanding that to submit for historic tax credit purposes, we would, the State Historic Preservation Office would want us to, in its current shape before it fell on Sunday, they would have wanted us to submit and try to take the building back to the original character inside and out, which would have cost a little over $15 million. We could have gutted the building and tried to save the shell, which would cost about $12 million. We could tear the building down and build a comparable building of the same size, so size comparison, for $7.6 million. So we felt pretty strongly at that point that it was probably not beneficial to use the community's assets to rehabilitate the building. And so the foundation had already moved that we pursue efforts to demolish the building. So knowing that, that's the course we were on, trying to, again, do reconnaissance work on what goes on in the site, how to remove the building. We've done some extensive research on brownfield grants, Stacy's office and my office, to try to understand what resources are available to us. We could go after some multi-purpose brownfield grants, which would wrap up abatement and demolition altogether. And so our target on that was moving towards an end of October grant deadline date. Those grants would not be awarded until, I believe, May, Stacy?
Yes.
So we were at that point going to be waiting until May to do any kind of rehabilitation, and still may have to wait until May. So we've been doing a lot of efforts. Obviously, then today we met with an environmental attorney from Cincinnati who kind of gave some guidance on how we can proceed. The challenge is coming up with the funds, as you guys know, to remove the building. I'm not sure that the city has resources available. The federal process, again, it puts us into May. It sounds like there could likely be some state EPA dollars that would be available in fairly quick order to remove the building. And so we need to go through some abatement. What happens now is that if the building was still standing, you could potentially get in and remove any kind of hazardous materials. Those would be treated as a liability, and then the rest of the building could be torn down fairly easily. As it is now, we have to treat the whole building as a hazardous materials, and so then has acts according to that. So the other item that we need to also pay attention to is the historic preservation side of it. If we use state or federal funding, we have to do a Section 106 review process on the building, unless we use private funds or local funds. So a Section 106 review process takes, at the quickest, 60 days, is what we were told today. It is possible, on rare occasions, to pursue a faster memorandum of agreement with State Historic Preservation Office for emergency situations. And the regulations say that imminent threat to public health or safety needs to be declared by a local government chief executive officer or legislative body. Then we also need some kind of a letter from an engineer, which I believe we've got confirmation from an engineer today that that isn't a safety issue. And then you would have to notify the State Historic Preservation Office and their advisory council on historic preservation. They then would have 7 days to object to an emergency claim. So we are at least with the Home Guard for another week, pending. I believe it would be this body who would need to declare it a public health or safety threat. So that's kind of what I have before you guys today. We would like to move as quickly as possible on just full removal. The north wall of the structure poses a still imminent hazard to the buildings to the north of it. And so we've been in contact with CenturyLinks, the city, and I believe Stacy is also as well, to make sure that they don't have employees working in that building. We need to make sure that
Go ahead, finish, I just have.
we need to make sure that we are taking efforts to block off and fence off that building as well, because we don't want people up and around it.
So, just a couple questions. What you're asking, so basically what you're asking this council to say is that it's imminent. And I don't think anybody can argue against that. Then does the money to tear it down have to come from the state? Or do we have the ability, you said how much it was to rehabilitate, it doesn't matter how much it is to tear it down, but do we have that much money locally that we can tear it down quickly?
I would tell you that we are working on all of our funding options today. We are pursuing probably 3 different options
Okay.
right now for funding. So probably nothing is finalized at this point, but we're working on funding now
Okay.
for the demo.
We've been working on a downtown master plan process, which we were hoping would guide what happens on that site, whether the building came down or, whether we were going to leave it. Obviously, the building's writing its own destiny on that. And so,
Question
I think the question of what goes on that site is one that I'm not sure that we can answer.
Oh, that's not my concern is getting it
But
down so that it doesn't matter what goes there for right now. I'm worried about the rest of the thing coming down and, causing havoc.
I got a question.
Yeah, Jeff.
I was on council the first time, Jay. You might remember when we applied for a Clean Ohio grant to get that tore down, and we had to pay somebody because it was so complicated. We had to pay someone to, what did we get turned down for on that one?
Well, back then, my recollection of that was it wasn't even on they weren't even looking at places like that. They were cleaning up environmental sites, true contaminated place. I mean, we tried, and I remember the EPA coming here and talking to us about the application, and it was like, you can throw it in here, but it's not gonna make it.
And then, you think it'd go now? And just,
Well, it sounds like
is that
they
Clean
can
Ohio
change
grant
the-
still?
They could,
from a federal standpoint, for the multi-purpose grant, it sounds like there would be 10 awards nationally. So we would have a long shot. I think what we would have going for us is the size and the scale and scope of the project that we have been pushing for downtown. That's very attractive, especially at a state level, but at a federal level already. So that could have some bearing in it. I think we probably are more expectant, especially for the Home Guard itself, to receive some emergency state funding.
Well, I guess my question would be, if it's still out there, I think we paid 10 grand to have someone write that, apply for that grant. It cost us 10,000, didn't it? Is that something we'd have to do again, council?
I don't.
So I'm not sure which grant it is, but.
It's Clean Ohio grant, is what it was called.
It's no longer, to be honest, it's no longer council's issue.
There was a phase 1 and a phase 2 environmental study, as well as a material study done several years, and that was a brownfield study. I'm guessing that what you're talking about was the phase 2 and the material study, which still stand in effect for what we need for the project. We will have to go back and do a phase 1, which is an updated phase one, which is scheduled, and was scheduled for Thursday, and will continue to happen.
And it wasn't our problem then either.
I understand.
But it was the attorney that said, since we were aware that it
Yep.
is a hazard, if something would happen, we would be liable, is the reason why so I'm sure it'd still be the same today. It was-
The other thing I think would be important to share is that's one of the benefits of the land bank. That because the land bank is now the ownership, under ORC, the land bank has sovereign immunity. We do have liability coverage, by the way, on that property. So I think we have done all it's probably at the best place it possibly could be.
That sounds like good news.
And we do have liability coverage on the building today.
Okay. Go ahead, no matter, Jeff. Go ahead, John.
I have a question. Steph, you need council to make a finding that this is an imminent public threat, correct?
Correct.
Do we need that in the form of a resolution or just a majority vote of council?
At the end of the day, we need a letter. We need a letter from you, or I think a resolution is best. If you have the ability to give us that today.
Because if we don't get that, then we have to go through section 106, and it'll
Fine.
take 60 to 90 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by then, the building,
Who knows?
Yeah.
Do you have, any chance you have language?
Right here.
Oh, you have it?
Thank you.
Can we just do a motion and have the council president write a letter based on the motion? Give the resolution tonight.
Why can't I do a resolution tonight? Why not?
We could ask her to be prepared. And
I can ask for a resolution right now. It would just take us,
That's true.
he'd just have to do it afterwards.
Yeah, it just,
Is that a digital copy by chance?
Mitch has.
I can email you one.
Because then it'd be easiest if we could just,
oh, this isn't a whole lot of type. I could,
oh, it's just that page right there?
it's just this right here.
Oh, okay. Bill?
Seth, question, are there any proactive measures that can be taken to secure that area until such time as we demolish it?
Yeah, so we've asked for some estimates for construction fencing that we feel is appropriate to put up. I think Stacy received an estimate here.
Today, this afternoon.
This afternoon that we'll follow up on tomorrow. From a street standpoint, I think Sarah's already
It's all.
talking to you on a text maybe about, we can't use a fence to block public traffic.
I told her, I think we just need one barricade on the south, on the north,
Yeah.
south end northbound.
And this is the buildings east of it, are they empty?
No,
No.
full.
Full?
But the immediate neighbor, what's happening with him?
He is still there, and it's his personal property, so.
So he's been told and
he's
is taking the risk?
Well, we've communicated with him, I'm not sure what else we can do about
Okay.
that.
I would at least share this, so there's a vehicle parked back there. He was on site yesterday morning. I asked him if he could move it. He said he would move it by noon. That vehicle hasn't moved. Also had a conversation with the foundation, and just shared that economic development would be willing to create space for him tomorrow
Mhm.
if he wanted to relocate to get out of the area. So I think we have
Okay.
done all we can do,
That's the one in most imminent danger, right?
Correct.
I would say. The other one, the CenturyLink building to the north, they are in there just intermittently anyway. When I talked to him yesterday, he said he would just make sure that they were not working, they would just work in the back block building instead.
The
Okay.
bigger
Or from
concern is
home.
probably the AEP main line that runs
Yeah.
immediately behind, that serves 2/3 of Van Wert.
We've also met with the AP representative yesterday.
Okay.
yesterday morning as well.
That could be.
All right, John, would you mind, I'm going to ask for a motion to introduce this resolution. Could you read that language, please?
Yes.
Just the boilerplate stuff. No, just so they know what they're voting
Oh, right
on.
now?
Yeah, please.
It would be for a resolution to find that the Home Guard Building, what's the ad? What's the street address?
201 East
201 East Main.
Main.
The Home Guard Building located at 201 East Main Street, Van Wert, Ohio, be found to be an imminent threat to public health or safety, and that action needs to be taken immediately regarding the building's removal.
Okay. Hey,
I'm gonna ask for that motion to be prepared, or
Miss-
make a motion for that to be prepared.
Mr. Egler makes a motion for that resolution to be prepared, second by
I'll
Mr.
second.
Marshall. Anybody have any questions, concerns, disagreements?
I have a question. Are there any state or federal EPA issues involved?
No. Yeah.
Yes.
So we're going to have the state EPA people here.
Well, that's why we have a phase 1 and a phase 2 done of the building to identify what those materials are. We certainly can't, actually, that's maybe a Stacy question on how that actually happens. But it
Can we
has
move
to be
forward
vetted.
without their approval, or
Well,
we
that's
have to
part-
wait for their?
That would be part of the demo process, that
Yeah.
it's really exactly the same, Councilman Penton, as the land bank properties, that you would do an assessment, or in this case, they may do an exterior assessment. We would, before the demo, you would notify the EPA, there's a waiting period. We would try and expedite that because of the structural issues, to try and do that as quickly as we're able, but yes, there would still be notification as part of the demo process.
I hope the EPA will move a little faster than they normally do.
We have a 2-week required waiting period, so we will just see if we can get that expedited in this instance.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Drew, please call the roll.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Jeff. Do we need, I need to run it all the way through, right?
Is it prepared?
I will be preparing it. You can make an order to prepare it. It's going to get prepared tonight, and the number is going to be 20-09-050.
So I'm gonna introduce it then?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, motion to introduce by Mr. Egler, second by Mr. Marshall. Please call the roll.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
This has to be prepared tonight, so we suspend rules on this.
Okay.
ordinance.
Motion to suspend rules,
Second.
second by Mr. Marshall. Please call the roll.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
And I make a motion that we pass this on its first and final.
Okay, motion to pass resolution number,
20-09-050.
on first and final, second by Mr. Marshall.
Yes.
John, will you read it once more?
Sure. So it'd be a resolution for the City of Van Wert to declare the Home Guard Building located at 201 East Main Street, Van Wert, Ohio, to be an imminent threat to public health or safety, and that the building needs to be removed immediately, or as soon as possible. As soon as possible, probably better language.
And it needs to be on an emergency basis. Which will
Yeah.
be, the language will be on an emergency basis since we passed it tonight.
And declaring an emergency.
Drew?
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Okay. You know, he'll prepare it after the meeting's over, bring it back up, I'll sign, Mayor will sign, Drew will sign, then you can have it this evening, or tomorrow morning,
I'll come get it in the morning.
yeah.
I can email it to you.
Perfect.
I'll email
Thank
the
you.
language, and then when we have a signed copy, maybe Eric might be able to send this again, copy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Appreciate it.
We'll all sign it tonight, but tomorrow morning,
Thank you.
perfectly fine.
You're all set?
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck.
I'll scan it. Then an email address, I'll send it to you.
Probably see you tomorrow, Dave.
All right. Any other comments, communications, petitions from council, from the public? All right, administrative reports, Mayor, Mr. Ken Markward.
Thank you. One of the things, we've received an invitation from Heartland Patriots. They're having Freedom Fest in Fountain Park this coming Saturday, September 19th, from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. They've asked us to be, or someone to be available to provide information in case there are any questions about charter government on the November election. And one of the folks in that group had specifically, I talked to Bill Marshall about that, he's agreed to be there. I'll be there part of that time in order to resupply him with handouts. If things get low, I can come back up here. But if any of you want to drop in anytime for a portion of that time, 11 to 4 Saturday, just to hear what people have to say, or maybe you'll see someone there you know, and they might want to talk to you instead of me, things like that. So depending on your availability, there's that to announce. And then in addition to getting things out, on the Van Wert City's website at vanwert.org, one of the buttons on there is called Charter City Source Guide, and we've now got 5 pieces of information on there. One of them is, for people who really like to read, is the 65-page source book from the Ohio Municipal League. It's on there. You can read all about it from 1912 and all the court cases and everything else. And then a much smaller one is just a listing. There's slightly over 250 cities and villages in Ohio that already have a chartered form of government. So that list is on there. If you can kind of look around, you'll see what other towns in our area have that. There's an FAQ, some of the questions that have popped up over the last couple of years, just kind of back and forth with question and answer format. The one thing that's not as up to date as I would like it to be today was I wanted to put a sample ballot on there so people could see the exact language of the 2-part question of forming the commission and selecting the members. So in the meantime, I found one from a different city from a couple of years ago and put it up there with an explanation that ours would look similar. The Board of Elections is projecting that our sample ballots should be ready in the next week to 10 days or so. And as soon as that's available, we'll swap that out so the actual ballot will be available. The 5th thing on there, because not everybody's schedule allows them to visit us here on Monday nights at 6:30 p.m. I've scheduled some informational meetings, and that's what I put at your place. It's completely based on my schedule and availability, but in case you wanted to drop in on one or more of those, just the same idea, in case you want to hear what people are talking about, meet here in this room. I'll just give the very shortest of an overview for people who would rather do an in-person discussion as opposed to maybe reading things from the website. We're trying to allow people to get their information the way that they prefer. Some like to read, some like to talk, some like to do both. So we made sure every day of the week was on there. We've got various times of the day from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. So I know we still won't be able to hit everybody's schedule, but hopefully anyone that is interested might be able to find at least one time that works for them. And in addition, There's another way that I'm hoping to turn over a discussion on how we might do something more interactive that maybe Mr. Davis was interested in doing. But before I want to do that, was there any questions about how that is set up on our website? Or
No. Is this were we gonna insert this in?
that is half. That's one side of what will go in the next water bill.
Okay,
And the other side is just kind of a reminder, there's going to be a ballot issue and kind of explains and tries to direct people to ask questions.
When does the water bill go out?
early October.
Well, they'll be
Late
there.
September.
Yeah,
Will
they'll
it be
be
late
there
Sep-
by October 1st.
Okay, all
We'll
right.
try to plan it that for the people to receive it around the first of the month.
Okay.
And may try to push it a few days earlier in order to get it out sooner. But it's another company that actually does the mailings, right?
They should all be in people's hands by the 27th, I think, if she does it on Friday.
And early voting starts October 6th.
Yes.
For those who want to.
Dave?
I might recommend that you might also have maybe a little handout with some bullet points or something for those people who do attend. Kind of,
Yeah,
the combination might be good.
yeah, some people like have something to take, read it later. Okay, that's all I have, except that I had already talked to Andrew about something else he had kind of mentioned.
Yeah, I think, at least what I'm seeing, and my work is very slow right now, so I'm spending a lot of time on the computer, reading and communicating, just kind of getting a grasp of what people are saying about this and what's going on, and obviously you don't hear as much from the people who don't have an opinion on it. What you hear are negative things, the ideas that people have come up with or they've heard from their friends and things like that. So that's where people are voicing whatever they think about it. So it's easy to jump on Facebook and find out what the grasp is of it. I think a good avenue for us would be to have some sort of interactive Facebook Live where people can get on and communicate directly with us, similar to not near this big of a schedule, but maybe every Thursday or every other Thursday for the next 4 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever. We have people get on and ask questions. Have a couple of us available, maybe the mayor's available, just to give people another avenue. Maybe they're not willing to come up for an in-person meeting. Maybe they're more comfortable doing, just typing a question into Facebook and having one of us read it and give them a response. There's a lot of untruths out there floating around. There's a lot of things that are over the top, and there's a lot of things that need addressed. There's a lot of people that are wondering why they haven't had information to this point. So whatever we can do to get good information, truthful information into their hands is positive at this point. Obviously, not everybody's going to be on board with it. I mean, I think we all know that. But being able to go out and just kind of right some of the wrongs that are floating around is something that needs to happen. So I'll work on putting something like that together. I'll put ideas out there so you guys know what's going on. And
Are you thinking of a synchronous meeting or an asynchronous post your question, we'll respond in kind, or and here's the only reason I ask is if you do something that's synchronous, you open yourself up for somebody that you're not really going to change their mind, but they're going to try to ruin it for everybody else. They're not really in it for the information. They're just going to try to be a jerk.
What I've seen previously, and I've watched a couple of these during quarantine with health departments, and what they're doing is they'll set up health director and city manager, health director and the mayor in front of a camera, and the questions will come in via Facebook, Joe Blow types of question. Not every question is going to be picked out. you're gonna go through the questions that are sent in, and you're gonna, okay, we're gonna take this question from Joe B. Smith, what is a charter? And that's the question you're gonna answer.
Okay.
So if there are multiple questions that come in that are either not relevant or lack detail, or multiple questions that are the same thing, you're just gonna skip right over those and go to the
So
next
it's
one.
synchronous, but we're not giving the camera
Yeah, you're not.
to
Right, yeah, you're not.
somebody else.
You're not gonna give them the ability to go face to face, but if they wanna send in a question,
Right, and
we might answer it, we might not.
well, I don't
But,
have a problem answering
Yeah,
every question, given the amount of, given time.
yeah. I've been pretty open to answering just about anything. It's been pretty open, so, that's how I've seen it work with some of
think
these
it-
other health departments.
I think it sounds like a good idea.
They've had a thing where they can just put, and I don't know how much production value we want to put into it, but they've had a thing flash up on the bottom that's just a copy paste of whatever the question was in the comments. The two people talk about it for a minute or two and then move on to the next one. So, I don't know. What Facebook page would we even run it off of? What do we have to, do we need to create one?
It'd be nice if there was one that was already known to people, but
I mean, the only one that we have right now that has a plethora of followers is the police department. I don't know if we want to do something like that or not.
Let's go right on those yeses.
No.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Is it something that we can host through a media outlet?
For those people who read them,
How many followers do you have on Facebook compared to how many we have?
I don't know, we have a Twitter page, we don't have a Facebook page.
Do you have something comparable to like the Ohio City Pride? He's got thousands of followers. I don't know if we could use that platform. I know a lot of people from Van Wert are on that.
Yeah.
I'll let you do that one.
Media will help, but that won't be everybody. We have about 12,000 readers, but.
Right. I don't know where we would go right now because we don't have a page to host it.
I was gonna
And I can
say-
host it through my personal page, but I don't really want to do that.
No, you don't want to do that.
How would it work if you set up a separate page, basically, charter facts, and then you let it be known on all those other pages?
Right.
That's a good idea.
That this is where we.
And it would be known this is just a short-term page and.
And to be honest, people could
Send it out
start,
to everybody.
if you set it up right now,
Right.
people could start, and we could start fielding questions already.
Yeah.
And then,
And then the
after
live
like,
production isn't as difficult. We could pre-product, put things together, have the questions pre-prepared almost.
and
And,
it's just that basically it's an extended FAQ page
Right.
at that point. And then we could do,
You could start by answering the questions that you're getting over and over.
yeah.
right, there's plenty.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I can work on that, but I could put it together before it goes live and we could review it and make sure it's.
I think that'd be and then if we want to do the live,
Right. Schedule it down the road.
yeah, we could do that come October, once people start getting these.
Right. I do have some other charter questions. Do we want to tackle that now?
Might as well, go ahead.
Go ahead and do that, okay. I had about a 2-hour conversation with somebody the other night on the phone regarding this, and just, it's another way of getting information. She had spoken with some of the members, or some of the people who've put their names on the Charter Commission ballot. And she's saying that that she spoke to these people and they don't know what they've gotten themselves into. Are we planning any kind of educational pre-steps for them so that they kind of have an idea what this process looks like once they get into it? I mean, if they are elected, are we just gonna throw them in a room and say, go?
No, we
or-
have, that's why we have contracted with Gary Hunter and his Ohio Municipal League. That's all part of the process. This is a 2-year process.
Right, but
Well, that's part of, you were barely on council, because I think it was just in February when we approved that contract.
Right, yeah. I started coming to meetings in October, so I picked it
So
up.
you might be more knowledgeable than I
Yeah.
thought. Yeah, the idea was you're not just gonna throw 15 people in a room and tell them
Right.
to go for it. That he is gonna help guide them through the process.
Okay.
Right, and
But
we,
maybe they need some education now,
Because
because
they're gonna get questions.
They're probably getting questions like, what is this
Once
that you're on
people
the
see the
ballot
sample
for?
ballot
Yeah, I
with their
think
name
that's-
on it,
Yep,
people are gonna ask them, do you know what this is? And they're gonna,
yeah,
they need to
I
know.
think we need to see if you can maybe have an educational session for them, or,
I mean, if we can get Gary up here to do that, or some way, get him with, schedule a couple meetings, have a couple times that these people can get in there and just kind of give them a breeze of what to expect, or what he's seen in previous places that he's been, how it's been successful, what the plan of attack should be.
I would, so Ken, if you would, I would do two things. I would ask Gary to hold a couple Zoom meetings with people that are gonna be on the ballot, but I would also, reach out and make sure that those individuals know those early meeting dates, and then they can start getting that information directly from us. And everybody that's on that list, well, not everybody, but most of the people that are on that list, you guys talk to.
Right.
So if you put somebody's name on that list or ask somebody to have their name on that list, you should probably contact them and say, hey, this is kind of what it is. That'd be probably a good first step.
well, and if we do a Zoom meeting with Gary, I think we should tell those candidates, if they don't have access to do that, they can come up here and we can do the Zoom meeting
Sure.
up here, so they can have access to it.
Does the commission have to be comprised of 15 people, or can it be any size?
No, we've determined that it's 15.
Well, the
What
state
happens if
determines
somebody
that.
decides that when they don't like what they've heard and they pull out?
There's steps in place. We have the ability to replace people.
Yeah.
Yes.
We pass
Okay.
that legislation.
Yeah, we passed legislation with the ability to nominate people and put them on there
Fill it back up to.
if it needs to be.
Yeah, okay.
Another thing that I came up with, with Gary and his involvement in this and how detailed it's gonna be, is he gonna be, and I don't know what the contract read, so I don't know what the expectation is. What is his role from today going forward as far as all these meetings and things like, is he gonna be here? Is it gonna be
Which
remote?
meetings? These meetings?
No, the commission meetings, if we get that far.
He will.
Is he gonna be in
We-
person for every one of them?
If necessary. We have budgeted funds, and, it's all based on what we need.
Okay.
So basically, if he drives here,
Mhm.
we'll pay for that. That's part of the budgeted funds. If he zooms in, we'll pay for that, but it'll be a lesser amount, because we're not paying for mileage and that type of stuff. So
Okay.
whatever's necessary,
The question that I got directly was, this person had heard, I think it was at the Heartland meeting that you were at, that they were under the understanding that the commission was gonna put the document together and he was just gonna review it at the end and make sure that everything was complete. And then
no,
that was what we went with. I
That's
thought it was
not
more
accurate.
inclusive that he was gonna be at.
I mean, he's a
attending
consultant.
more. Right.
He's a consultant. There's gonna be, it's gonna be a process.
And it's not that he's doing nothing, but we don't want him to do much between now and the election.
Right. Because we don't
Because
know.
it might be defeated, and then what's the point? But then he's prepared them to meet with them
Right.
to guide them through the process.
And another thing is, this body's not gonna be on the commission,
Mhm.
but this body will be involved, because we have to be involved.
Right.
Whoever's on council, whoever's sitting in this chair, whoever's the mayor, or whatever language we use, whoever gets voted into these positions has to be able to run that charter.
Right.
So, in my mind, the logical first step would be for all of us to say, hey, this is what I think it should, these are the things that we have identified, because we've been in this room for X number of years.
I think that's what we need. We need that now. We need to know what we are expecting to put on it, what we want to put forward, because that's what people want to know.
No, I wrote a little bit on a wish list, but it's not I can say this is what I would like, but that's it,
That's,
but I'm not on the commission.
right, I understand that, but that's the information that people want before they say yay or nay, before we even put it on there.
What if everybody on council, myself included, what if we all had some kind of a statement, here's why I think we need a charter? I mean, I have specific reasons, I'm concerned about my office going forward, and that my last day would be a December 31st, and the new auditor's is January 1st, and how do you, how do you have that happen? I have a staff of one, it's not like I can train somebody. So, maybe if we did that, I don't think we can really say as a group.
Yes,
I don't
we
think you
can.
can say, this is what we want, because it is the commission that has to put it together. But we could definitely individually say, here's where I think a charter would benefit the city of Van Wert.
Right.
And I don't know what we want to do with that information, maybe put it on the website, I don't know.
You
I mean,
can almost
that's-
call it from my point of view.
Yeah.
That's,
Kind of
to be honest, that's kind of what I tried to do
Right. With the
last
initial.
week.
Right, and so I think everybody needs to do that, and I don't know if we want to have Gary Hunter look at them before we put them out to be, I don't know. If you want to have the reasons critiqued, I don't know.
I guess you're,
edited.
Or edited,
the
yeah.
question then becomes, are you writing it as Martha Balliet, or are you writing it as city auditor Martha Balliet?
Well, I'd be writing mine as city auditor. And here's
Ultimately,
why I
we're all
think that-
citizens anyway.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
whatever this charter says, we have to live in post this seat.
Yep.
So that's what we get to say to people when they say, we hear this thing's gonna raise taxes. We can say, that's not the case. I don't wanna raise taxes because I have to pay more taxes.
Well, and the other thing is, if a charter gets passed, and I think it needs to be clear, the mechanism for raising taxes isn't going to change because of the charter.
Right.
That still has to go before the vote.
But that's the fallacy that goes
Yeah, but
around.
that's something that has to be.
I'm a little concerned that everybody starts putting their opinion out there, and they may be quite divergent. You're just gonna confuse people, you're not really going to clarify the issue. And say, oh, well, geez, they don't even know what they want.
Well, that's what they think right now. though.
We're asking,
They think
Well,
they
you're
don't
gonna,
know.
then, you're gonna make sure that they know that's what.
it seems to me that they're asking for what, we're trying to get to step one, and that's, and people's wondering, well, what about step 5? Well,
Yep.
we can't go to step 5, we have to go step one, and then it's it'll fall in place.
But if we can't get them,
But we gotta get past step one if they're not willing to go past it.
Well, that's what they'll decide in
And
November.
Well, and the charter commission, they could have a whole different idea than what city council thinks. mean,
Exactly right.
And that's what I've told people as well. I mean, we could tell you one thing, and the document that we get is completely different at the end of it.
And we can give a wish list, but they're gonna write it
They're gonna
up.
do it themselves.
And I think that, a good thing to put out is, what can a charter do, a charter commission do? What can a charter not do? That way, you have all these things like taxes and all these kind of things, you say, but they can't do that. And you can always say, oh, these are the kind of things that they can do. These are the kind of things that they can't do. That gives them a good basic education on what a charter is, and then they get all this stuff about changing taxes and all of that. You kind of get that out of the picture. That's your best bet.
Where are we, Ken, with the, lack of a better term, the press release that Gary was working on with the questions?
Since I wanted that in the water bill, I think what you might want to do is go, we don't have a laptop in right now, go on the city's website and go to the frequently asked questions site on that charter site. I don't know how many I put on there, maybe 10.
So, Andrew, I'm in agreement with Jeff and Dave. I I can talk individually about what I would like to see, but I don't know that all of us need to do that. I would probably just start directing people to the information that we have available and say, you know, we'll continuously be adding and populating this. That's probably the route that I would recommend.
When we do the Facebook Live, those questions are gonna come.
And that's fine.
So we're just gonna direct them there and.
Well, and if somebody wants to ask me personally why I think, I mean, I don't have a problem answering that,
Yeah,
but
I don't either.
And it's important for them to know, when they vote November 3rd for the commission, that they're not voting for a charter.
Right.
They're just, that's just step one, and they're just saying, well, it's, you know.
I'm hoping that people read my letter to the editor on Independent and Times Bulletin, because I was very clear, this is a very long process. Everybody, a year from now, everybody's gonna get a document in the mail that says this is what we want the charter to be, and it's an up or down vote at that point. And if you don't like it, vote no. But now's not the time, in my opinion, to just, be completely against anything just because it's new and different for Van Wert. More than half of the cities, both larger and smaller than us in this state, have gone this way. And there's a reason that they've gone this way.
And I think you want them to be informed voters, obviously. You want them to actually know at least a little bit about what this is all about, so
And
that they can go out and not.
October 30th of 2018 was the very first time you wrote about this with this council.
I know.
That's 23 months ago that people have had an opportunity to read.
Not the only city I've covered charter issues on either, I can tell you. Some go well, some don't.
Understood.
The only other thing that I had relating to, I get indirectly related to this. I've had multiple people ask me about making these meetings live, and I know that was tackled before I got here, and there was something relating to the school needing to upgrade equipment to make it happen.
We used to have the ability, we do not anymore. There are, my knowledge, not funds to do it, or the inability to do it.
I think my idea on this is we need to find funds. People need to be able to see this stuff, especially as we go into the charter stuff, the stuff.
They
can see it taped, so.
They can see it immediately afterwards.
Exactly. I think that's a non-issue.
We have 2+ years of city council meetings on the website, and I would guarantee is probably a strong word, that the individuals that want to see it live haven't looked at the website to watch it the very next day. We had it live for several years, and nobody watched it live for several years.
Rush up here and, during, if they see something they don't like on, I mean, there is no real reason to have it live. As long as it's available.
I guess my opinion, the people that I've talked to talk about when they were able to watch them on TV, and they may be people that don't have access to the internet or not know how to get from point A to point B or whatnot. If there is an avenue, I think we should look into it.
Ultimately, the responsibility, the ability to do it is no longer under our control.
If we can have a Facebook Live, we can get a video on YouTube.
On the website where the videos are, it says sign up for text notifications, so those people can get it.
They can get it the next day.
Yeah.
I get it.
When did we stop having it live? Because I went up and talked to Bill, and we was live last year. We was going live again.
A piece broke.
Well, but let me go up and talk to Bill again.
I thought something broke, and
that was the last I heard too.
I thought something at the school was either broken or out of date and couldn't be fixed. and the decision was made at that point that it was not worth the dollar amount to fix it in order for the handful of people that wanted to watch it live. And our next best thing was to put it on the website.
And remember, only Spectrum cable people can watch it live, so I'm not even sure
Yeah.
that represents half the community.
Exactly.
So maybe
We
we need to
cutting
look at
cables.
Facebook Live. I mean, that's what my church uses.
I mean, that's what, yeah, churches are using it, other towns are using
I have no
YouTube
idea how
Live and
that
stuff.
works.
I mean,
Yeah, I-
it doesn't have to be super high production value, as long as people can hear us talk, and that's what these folks are looking for, is
You could
just,
probably put it on
It
YouTube.
says we're live.
we're live right now. Oh, where at?
Spectrum?
That's the problem, it's Spectrum 1000
Okay.
and I don't even.
Yeah, the channel's
It's been
1034, but once again, I remember that meeting because it
All right.
was.
Obviously, I'm wrong.
I knew I'm talking about when you're live.
John Butler informed us that in order for the school to go back live out on the internet, the school would have to invest something
Okay.
to the tune of $8,000 to
That-
$10,000.
So it's the live streaming that we don't.
Live streaming on the internet's
But
what
we
we
have
don't
it on
have, but we
TV.
do have it on the
Okay,
TV.
so now I can just tell people if they
Okay.
want the meeting, they can go to Spectrum. They
Okay,
should be able to see it there.
then I was wrong. I thought we were,
On the city's website the next day.
Yeah,
okay, I apologize.
answers my question. That's all I've got.
That's it?
That's it, yeah.
Are you sure?
Just, oh, no, I got more, but
You just had-
we'll go on to that.
You just took like 45 minutes, we're not even doing administrative reports yet.
Can I add something in on that?
Oh.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But I think Mr. Moser brought up a great point that maybe on that question and answer page that we have, can we do, this is what a charter government can do, but more, I think more importantly, what can it do?
I agree.
I think that's what can it do? It's not gonna raise tax, I think that's just,
I think people are more interested in what the limits are.
I think
Right.
that's a good idea. We'd be happy to post it as well. I mean, it's not a difficult thing.
We should be able to come up with some sort of, something document-wise that could work.
That's one of the things I thought Gary was working on, we'll check.
Yeah, check with Gary. I don't want you guys to duplicate his
Right.
work,
What
because
he's
he's working on
Yeah.
something, or that type of language. I don't want you to spend a bunch of hours doing the exact same thing he's doing.
Yeah. Reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. All right. Ken, is that it?
That concludes
And if
my
anybody
report.
has a question for the mayor, save it to after the meeting. Safety Service Director, Mr. Jay Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. President. You've seen work on North Washington Street. The crew is working on ADA ramps that are not compliant since our last construction in 2007. So those are getting upgraded as part of this paving project. Shelley is to be here Wednesday morning to mill Main Street, from the bridge to Washington Street, and they hope to do that Friday morning. They're gonna hold up on milling Washington Street where they're doing sidewalk repairs until that crew's out of here, hopefully at the end of the week. So next week we'll see some milling and asphalt going down on Washington Street. They're gonna focus from Route 30 on out to the old Blinker Light location, 224, 127. The industrial drive lift station that we had 2 lift station projects for this summer. That one is complete and going online Thursday. And then Peterson Construction will begin work on the Franklin Street pump station next week to completely rebuild that pump station. So we're gradually over time upgrading all of our about 50-year-old pump stations as we go around town. So that's all I have to report.
All right, any questions from council for Jay, from the public? Thank you, Jay. Auditor, Mrs. Martha Valiant.
I have a couple things. First thing is the bank reconciliation for August 31st, which I did send out to all of you, I think on Friday.
Yes.
First page of that report just shows that we had $13 million on the books and that same amount in all the various banks and investments. The cash position report does reflect a positive balance in all funds as required. The comparison of general fund revenues compared this year to last year. We are down,
So 163?
$277 for the month.
Oh, okay, I'm thinking about the last page.
I don't know, wait a minute. Oh, that's the difference, okay.
Yes, sorry.
So we're down about 2%, we're about 2% less than what we collected last year in general fund revenues. Our projection for this year originally was a 4% increase. So, when this whole COVID business started, we thought maybe we'd be looking at a 10% reduction from our estimate for this year, which I'd say we're probably going to come in under that, maybe not the full 10%, but I'd say we're probably going to come in under that. And then what John was referring to, the last page of the report shows that we have spent $164,000 more out of the general fund than what we have received, which is more or less what we anticipated to see. So our position's not gotten any worse, so I think that's a plus. We're just still hanging in there.
The 164, I mean, obviously you don't want to be under, but it could be a whole lot worse.
Oh, yeah.
'Cause, I mean, that's, you know, that's well within our carryover from this year, so that's really hats off to have the department heads trying to keep expenses down. We need to make sure that we appreciate them.
Yeah. So any questions on those financial reports? Nothing really too exciting. Okay, the next thing I have is an invoice that needs to be approved on a then and now. I have one invoice from Wert Construction Company. This has to do with the Jefferson Street Bridge and paving in that area. The invoice is for $13,332.74. So, Mr. Eglin, you can ask in your report for that to be approved. Then I have a couple pieces of legislation that have been prepared, so you can take a look at. The first is ordinance ending in 047, the number of supplemental appropriations. And what really spurred this was, oh, wait a minute, in my, okay. We got another distribution of CARES dollars, coronavirus relief funds. So we received an additional $56,807.50. So we needed to get that appropriated, so I went through the rest of my appropriations to see what adjustments needed to be made. So I'll just real quickly go down that list. The first two are in my office. $250 is for hospitalization. $1,300 under other operating is for indigent burials. We have had this year 2 indigent burials, which the city is required by the revised code. If someone dies in our city.
Where are you?
On the supplemental.
047?
Yeah, and there should be another operating under my, you said municipal court, no.
Oh, does that need to be auditor?
No, that's the wrong amount. Oh, there's some errors in here. Should be $250 for fringe benefits and
Right.
other operating $1,300, and that's for the indigent burials.
Okay.
So anyway, we are required to pay for burials if the person dies in our city and there's no money to bury them. We've had 2 this year, which I think in the 20 years I've been here, we've only had one other one. So I don't know, when I talked to the funeral directors, they were just like, you might see more of this coming, so I don't know, we'll see.
So just so I'm clear, under auditor, fringe benefits, and then another line for other operating for
Yes.
$1,300? Okay.
Which I'll give
I'm
you.
sorry I missed that.
Well, I missed it too when I checked you from the first time.
All right.
The next one is municipal court, $2,500 for
Okay.
their wellness reimbursement.
So we're just missing a line on the one we have.
Correct.
Right.
All right.
Next one is income tax, other operating, $500, and that's just for a backup system that they needed to have. The next one is elections, other operating, $5,050. We received our final settlement from the county, which when they pay us our real estate tax revenues, then anything that we owe the county back, they deduct from that. So one of the charges is for elections, which we had $5,050 more in expense than what we had budgeted. The next is Fund 201, which is street maintenance and repair, $2,534, and that's for an insurance refund. We had a situation that we needed to refund an employee for paying for some health insurance that we shouldn't have had them pay for in the first place. The next is traffic maintenance, $5,000 for traffic signals. In Fund 229, that's the CARES grant, that's $56,807.50. Fund 301, street construction, fringe benefits, $1,440 for hospitalization, and $557 under other operating, but that is another insurance refund. Fund 502 is our, we received money for the TIF at Town Center, which the TIF, they pay, payment in lieu of taxes is what it's called. They pay that instead of paying property taxes, they pay it to the county, and since it's technically our TIF, the money comes to us and then we send it back to the county. We never know exactly how much it's gonna be. So we got $95,000, or no, not $95,000. Yeah, $95,529.34. We received more than what we had budgeted, so we have to appropriate that to pay that back to the county. Water fund, $70 for fringe benefits. That was for FICA insurance. We have several council people that are paying into Social Security instead of PRS, which we didn't budget enough. Water construction, personal services, $1,000 for salaries. We also need to add to the water construction, $6,500, which that's an addition, Dawn, that I'll have to give you. $6,500 for capital for a
Water construction, what fund is that one?
601.
Okay.
I'll give you that. We had a vehicle that was damaged, and to pay for that, it is covered by our insurance. Our deductible is what, $2,500?
Yes, you said capital, that can I go back into other operating because you took it out of garage maintenance?
Yeah, we did, didn't we? Thank you for that.
So it's another operating
Yeah.
65.
6,500. Fund 801 is our ESID. Should be ESID, John.
No.
Which that is the PACE projects. We have two different projects, this energy financing. The hospital has one project, and the other project is the assisted living that's being built out by Wert Health North. Anyway, that's a similar thing to the TIF in that they pay money as if they were paying real estate taxes. It comes to us, and then we have to send it off to financing authority that financed those projects. And we appropriated that $1 short, so we need to add $1.
Real $1.
Yeah. The last three funds, 850, 851, and 875, those are all funds that we receive money from real estate taxes for police pension, fire pension, and the Woodland Cemetery. And again, we don't always know the exact dollar amount that we're going to get, so we received in police and fire $1877 each, more than what we had appropriated, and for the cemetery $442.85. Hopefully that will be it for the year, but sometimes in November and December, for some reason, we get some odd little payments, so there could be more for those funds. So Mr. Eggle, you'll need to ask for that to be prepared as well.
48
Is it 48 also?
tax.
Yeah, that's, yeah. So then there's another piece of legislation which ends in 048, which when we do the tax budget in July, we send it to the county for the budget commission to approve. And when they approve it, then they tell us what our millage is going, an estimate of the millage, and we have to accept those estimates. And that's what this 2009048, which they're estimating that for the general fund in real estate taxes, mostly real estate taxes is what it is, we will receive $406,250. Police and fire pension funds, $52,600 each, and the cemetery funds, $35,000 each. So that just needs to be, asked to be prepared, and then that will need to be passed as an emergency. The only other thing I just wanted to, we talked about purchasing Chromebooks, which this right here is what we're talking about, purchasing for council members. We plan to use some of our CARES dollars so that if we do have to have remote meetings, everybody has access to a computer that they can take home. Otherwise, they'll stay here. They'll be able to be used to during the meeting, so we can be totally paperless. I got a quote on these. They're around $300 a piece. We plan to buy one for each council station. They'll stay here in a docking station, and like I said, if we have to go remote, then they'll be checked out. So if anybody wants to take a look at this before you leave, it's here. That's all I have.
All right. Any questions from council for the auditor? From the public? Thank you, Martha. Law Director, Mr. John Hatcher.
Thank you. Couple of things. I did report, I thought I requested the last meeting that we have an executive session regarding the litigation on the Market Street Bridge.
You're right, we did. And I forgot to,
Got to add that.
I forgot to add that when I, okay.
Regardless of that.
Sorry.
It's okay. Obviously I forget playing myself, so it's all good. Couple of notes for nuisance properties. And we have probably 7 to 10 cases pending. 2 of those cases, parties have decided to, those cases have been resolved due to parties selling their properties to a third party. One, the nuisance property is already being demolished, and that case was actually very early on. And the other one, I agreed today, the case was set for trial tomorrow, I agreed to dismiss it without prejudice, which gives me the ability to refile, assuming that the real estate transaction closes on Saturday like it's supposed to. Assuming it does, it will remain that way, and then the new party will have an opportunity to do something with that property. If that's not the case, I have up to 12 months to bring it back up. And that obviously if we have a new party, then that takes care of that. So people are being motivated to do things with their property instead of sitting on them, at least the people we can get a hold of. It's a good sign, a positive sign, and actually more people are coming to my office. I don't know if they're coming to you, Bill, about other properties. It's one of those that the little bit of work we've done is spurring new work as more people are bringing more and more properties to our attention. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing, no.
But it is what we're dealing with. So, make sure you tell the people in the public we are dealing with them, and we appreciate the fact that they bring this stuff to our attention. Because we do have a small code enforcement group, and they work hard, but they have duties other than code enforcement as well. So when someone like Mr. Agler brings stuff to our attention, or people bring it to him and he brings it forward, that's the kinds of things that keeps the ball moving. And it doesn't always move as fast as we would like, but it is moving in a positive direction. And I thank everybody involved in all that. That's all I have.
So you had asked for an executive session that I neglected to put on the agenda.
Yes, to, reasoning being
Do we need,
litigation.
does that need to be done tonight, or was it just information for everybody?
Because of the nature of the litigation and the timing that the judge wants a response, I think tonight would be
Are we permitted if it's not on the agenda?
probably not. So,
John, do we need to?
what?
Do we need to?
Well, we can,
We can't adjust the
we can
agenda now.
wait, we can wait.
No, I mean, do we need to be in executive session to talk about what you're gonna talk about?
It's not much different when you've already told us,
I don't think we have anything to hide anymore.
If you all then, fine, okay.
I'm kind of excited to make the announcement.
The problem is,
You already have an agreement?
No.
not quite.
Yeah, no, I'll be quiet if you think legally that we shouldn't do that. So it's fine.
We're not quite there, that's why I would rather do it in executive
Does that have
session.
to be on the agenda, executive session?
I don't,
Well, did he ask for it in minutes? Is that in the minutes?
You can ask for it at any time during the
Yeah,
meeting.
we can
I
adjust,
thought-
we can
yeah,
amend it.
you're-
Just a-
Well, I mean, I don't think that needs to be on the
I don't-
You
agenda.
can move to, make a
Yes.
motion to move to executive
Yes.
session.
okay.
Yeah.
We'll do that after we're done with ordinances.
I just don't think we're gonna take any action out of it because of what I'm gonna update, which, you know, means one of the pieces of
Okay,
drafted legislation is probably null and void for the moment.
okay.
Okay, so we'll go into executive session after we do ordinances, and you just heard him say there won't be any action afterwards,
If there is, just let me know.
so.
Email me something.
I can do that.
Great.
Okay, all right. Any questions for the law director?
John, is this resolution regarding what you're talking about?
049 is the proposed one that would be discussed there.
So I don't need to talk about
You don't need to bring it up.
it. Got it.
Oh, okay then. All right,
Again, that's why I think there'd be no action.
okay. All right, committee reports, health, service, and safety, Mr. Bill Marshall.
Thank you, Mr. President. My report tonight on code violations. I took a look at a snapshot of the way things have looked over the year. And through September 14th, we had 236 violations reported, which is down 25% from last year, which is a very interesting number when you start comparing. So to the law director's point, yeah, I think we're making a difference. People are
That's good.
maybe more cognizant of, what they should and should not do. In terms of looking at the last 2 weeks since the last report, we had 12 open, 6 were closed within that 2-week period, which is good. And then I took a look at some of the older ones, some of the older violations that we had that were, some of them in some cases were 6 months. And we've whittled those down to, I think we got about 5 or 7 that are left. That, and there's, some of those are rather egregious. So, and they're gonna be somewhat difficult, may take a little bit of time, but they have our full attention. And that's all I have to report. Any questions?
Any questions? All right, thank you, Bill. Economic Development, Mr. Jeff Cowles.
I do not have any report tonight, Mr. President, but I would like to request a committee meeting at our next meeting about 6:15.
Sure. Topic?
Infrastructure agreement.
So that would be Monday, the
28th.
28th, 6:15, Economic Development. Got that, Drew? All right.
And that's all I have.
Any questions for Economic Development? 6:15, Infrastructure Agreement. Okay, thank you, Jeff. Parks and Recreation, Mr. Joel Penton.
Thank you, Mr. President. A very short report. Things continue to go well for the Parks Department. No more major projects are planned. We got everything done we wanted to do. Keep it up with the mowing, but just barely, as usual. We've got 5 flag football teams playing, and there's some teams from Convoy and Delphus that come over and play flag football here in Van Wert, so everything is going well.
All right.
That concludes my report.
All right. Any questions for Parks and Recreation? Thank you, Joel. Finance, Mr. Jeff Egler.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the auditor reported, we have a then and now due to work construction on the Jefferson Street Bridge paving for $13,332.74.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Murgy to pay the then and now. Drew, please call the roll.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
And at this time, I'd like to have the law director prepare a resolution accepting the amounts and rates determined by the Budget Commission that they certify through the county auditor and declare emergency.
All right, motion to accept.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Murgy. Any questions? Drew, please call the roll.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Thank you. The ordinance, the resolution has been prepared. It's Resolution 2009-048. I'd like to introduce it to council.
Okay, motion to introduce. Second by Mrs. Murgy. Please call the roll.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Since this is an emergency, I'd like to suspend rules.
Okay, motion to suspend rules.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Murgy.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
And I'd like to pass this ordinance on its first and final reading.
Okay, motion to pass 2009-048 on first and final. Second by Mrs. Murgy. Drew, if you would please read the resolution and call the roll.
20-09-048, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor and declaring an emergency. Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
And I'd like the, excuse me, I'd like to have the law director prepare an ordinance that would make supplemental appropriations to each specific funds that the auditor shared with us earlier and declare an emergency.
Okay, motion to make supplementals and declaring an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Murgy.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
The ordinance has been prepared. It's ordinance 2009-047. I'd like to introduce it to council.
Motion to introduce. Second by Mrs. Murgy.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
This is an emergency, so I'd like to suspend rules.
Motion to suspend. Second by Mrs. Murgy. Just makes his typing a lot easier. Let's call the roll.
A lot of looking tonight. Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penton?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
And finally, I'd like to have this ordinance passed on its first and final.
Okay, motion to pass 2009-047 on first and final. Second by Mrs. Murgy. Please read the ordinance and call the roll.
20-09-047, an ordinance to make supplemental appropriation to funds 101, 201, 229, 301, 502, 601, 602, 801, 850, 851, 875, and declaring an emergency. Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Penn?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
And that would conclude my report.
Okay, any questions for finance? Thank you, Jeff. Judiciary and annexation, Mrs. Joy Murgy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report this evening.
No report. Judiciary is a lot better than finance, isn't it?
Sometimes.
Any questions for Mrs. Murgy? Thank you. Streets and alleys, Mr. Steve Hellman.
Yeah, I have one item. Last meeting, Mr. Agler brought to our attention with the Market Street and Sycamore that intersection. And I went out to the intersection with Mr. Fleming, Mr. Markward, and Mr. Lawson, and, yeah, I agree with Jeff there that something definitely needs to be done, so, I would like to make a motion for the law director to prepare an ordinance for the no parking zone and with the crosswalk.
Okay, we have a second? I'm sorry?
I was thinking we prepared it last time.
We did not.
discussed.
We just discussed it, and he was asked to go review it, and this would be the,
Here's your first whereas, need the date changed.
Yes, it would.
Oh.
To today's date.
yes, good call.
That's a good
Thank
call.
you.
Everybody got that? The first whereas will be today's date. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Holman, second by Mr. Egler. Does everybody understand we had this conversation last time? Any questions?
I just have one point. Mayor asked me to clarify in an email, and I failed to do so. In the Exhibit A, there are 3 calls for the extension of the parking, window parking zone. The reason there are not 4 is because on the south side of the street, on Sycamore from, I believe, Market to Washington is already a no parking zone.
Yeah, the southwest.
Southwest corner, yes.
Yes.
Correct.
That's already, all the way down to Washington Street's already no parking, so there's no point to have a
Right.
4th call, so that's why there's only 3. Just so everybody, if you think you're looking at it, you think you're missing something, that's why.
Sure. Everybody good? All right, Drew, please call the roll.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Fenton?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
So the law director has prepared ordinance number 20-09-046, and I would like to make a motion to introduce.
Okay, motion to introduce. Do I have a second? Mr. Egler, seconds. Please call the roll.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Fenton?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
That is all I have tonight.
All right, we'll read that for the first time under ordinance, resolutions and ordinances.
And do a roll after the first reading too, or no?
Yes, yeah, but we'll do that on the back page.
Okay.
All right, property and equipment, Mr. Andrew Davis.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no report this evening.
Any questions for property and equipment? All right, thank you. Unfinished business, we had conversations about both of those, code enforcement and a lengthy conversation about charter government. Is there anything else to do with either one of those issues under unfinished business? Any new business to come before council? We do not have anything on the consent agenda. Moving on to resolutions and ordinances, this would be Mr. Marshall.
Yes. A motion on ordinance number 2008042, an ordinance to amend the Van Wert City Ordinance 98.04.
Okay, motion to pass on
Pass.
third and final.
Third and final.
Okay, do I have a second? This is the mowing fees. Second by Mr. Callis. Any questions? Drew, please call the roll. Or read it and call the roll. Sorry.
Ordinance number 20-08-042, an ordinance to amend the Van Wert City Ordinance 98.04, the mowing fees. Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Fenton?
Yes.
Mr. Egler?
No.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
No.
Okay, motion passes 5-2. And 046. Advisory vote, first advisory vote.
Ordinance number 20-09-046, an ordinance to enact a no parking zone due to the implementation and installation of a crosswalk at the intersection of Sycamore Street and North Market Street. Straight roll, right?
Yes. Yep.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Fenton?
Yes.
Mr. Egler?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
All right, at the request of the law director, I need a motion to enter into executive session once again.
I'll make that motion.
They have a second? Second by Mr. Callis, first by Mr. Aguilar, second by Mr. Callis.
Need to take the raising.
Oh, yes, sorry, that was on our audit, wasn't it? Pending legislation.
Pending litigation.
Litigation, I'm sorry, pending litigation. Please call the roll.
Mr. Rager?
Yes.
Mr. Callis?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mr. Fenn?
Yes.
Mrs. Murgy?
Yes.
Mr. Hellman?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.